But even rewatching it now, I felt like, you know what? At least they seem genuine. At least the actors, Ethan Hawke and Judy Depley, are pulling it off so well. It seems like they really are pondering. And that goes back to the making of this movie, the conversation. It's legitimate. The first movie is Richard Linklater's brainchild. Like, Judy Depley and Ethan Hawke weren't as involved from the writing perspective in the first movie than they were in the second and third. This is all from the mind of Richard Linklater. And I've got so many clips I want to share with the audience. But I want to tell you this, James, right out of the bat. We might have enjoyed this first movie, even with, some certain observations. But a lot of people think these movies are very talky. It's just dialogue based. The storyline's very simple. Just two people falling for each other, having a romantic evening, afternoon, morning together. And some people just find it dull. I saw a lot of reviews saying that, this is just dull. One of my friends said to me, even if you're comparing this to Woody Allen movie, there's a level of cinematography. There's a level of, changing scenes. It feels like the camera's just following them and there isn't a lot here. I guess I can agree with that. But before we dive more into the first movie, I want to really, as fans of the movies, I want to play clips of the thought process behind these movies, especially about them being talky, because I think the director has a very, very interesting thought process that I want to get your thoughts on about making a movie based on conversation alone. And that's one of the things that makes these movies stand out. They are dialogue driven, and that's it. The plot is thin, but the interesting dialogue carries you through. And let's hear a little bit about the thought process on that from the director and the actors.
One of the things that interests me is how talky these films are, and how they fly in the face of all of that film school wisdom that images should take precedence over words, and that there should be 3 acts, and that the first turning point should be approximately, I forgot what Sid Field says,
22.
page 22. So this is such a different experience, and it flows in such a different way. How intentional was that, and how much did you feel yourself resisting that model of the 3-act page 22?
Well, the first part of that is just all the dialogue, and I think that's what it is when you're really getting to know someone. The idea of the first film was two people connecting. Mm-hmm. So that in real life, that is a very verbal, conversational event. The first film was really just about trying to capture kind of something, the intangible thing between these two people that, it was a very minimalist design. Nothing great happened in the movie other than this connection. So I just remember wanting to make a film just about that, which entailed, it was really all conversation.
But that must have been a different experience for Ethan and Julie to do so much dialogue in a film,
I feel like I learned, told Rick this, that on Before Sunrise, I learned how to talk on camera. I mean, most of the time as an actor, they ask you, really in certain ways, just strike a certain pose or evoke a feeling or emote. And Rick really wanted us to speak to each other. And it was really challenging for me. And for Julia, it was their second language. And so it was extremely, both of us, it was so much work all the time. I remember we each had these people assigned to us to run lines with all the time.
First film too? No, first film.
First one. Yeah. Remember we used to go to that park and run lines?
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
And I just want to jump in and say that is the thing that really strikes me even after all these decades of this movie's existence. It's still entertaining, and it's only the conversation. And the romance blossoms from the conversation, but the chemistry works. And I don't think I've ever seen a movie, even a Woody Allen movie, that just carried it through just on the conversation alone. And the second movie takes us to a whole nother level, in my opinion. But the first movie, it's interesting. Their conversation are interesting. Them being young and having all these thoughts about the future. It's earnest. And it's a little bit corny, and it's a little bit highfalutin in some aspects, but I still feel a joy and a charisma and this kind of I feel like they're expecting, they have so much expectation and joy for life and the future and what it may bring, that when you go back to it after watching the other two movies as well, it puts the film in a whole new light, especially when you know what they become. And that's why this movie, even after rewatching it again and again, seeing their future, it really makes this a much more enjoyable watch, because I picked up a lot more from the rewatch, especially knowing how their future goes. A lot of irony, especially knowing how their future goes. But this film really is really well done, and it's apart from some visual stuff I'll get to in a moment, I find it very entertaining for just a conversational movie.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it took me a little while to sort of readjust my brain and put myself back into being that age and what it would have been like for me, you know, what I felt when I watched the movie for the first time. And the movies definitely, they age with the characters.
Yeah.
The second and especially the third don't feel like, oh, they're just doing the same thing again, even though they kind of are doing the same thing again.
Yeah.
By just having it be a conversation between two people. But they're in such different places in their lives each time. And that first movie is entirely about their innocence. They're starting to become a little bit jaded, but again, it's sort of it's jaded in a way that they kind of don't know what they're talking about because they haven't lived enough. They're sort of regurgitating things that they've read, and they're trying to sound a little bit maybe older than they are, the way that you do when you're that age.
Yeah.
And they, you know, even though they do both mention, you know, that they had pretty good childhoods and everything, like I said, there's that we might pick up on them being kind of affluent and everything, but they don't even, either they don't recognize it because it's just their lives, or they don't want to talk about it because they're embarrassed and they're trying to sound like they're these tortured young people, you know, struggling to find who they are and everything. It does a really, I don't know how old Richard Linklater was compared to the actors at the time, but he really does recapture that feeling of being that age and everything being kind of new.
Yeah. And I find, because the movie's so straightforward, it's just these two just talking, and so many people are falling in love with the conversation. And the other films kind of, as I said before, make you fall back in love with how, you know, the kind of humble beginnings. I have to admit, when we said we was going to rewatch these movies, this movie out of the three was the most forgettable. Mm-hmm. Before I rewatched it, I thought to myself, because the next two movies have such a strong energy, very, very powerful energy, that this one I thought, oh, this is the one where they just fall for each other. This is the one where they're just, you know, la-di-da, happy. And, you know, when I watched it again, I felt sad for them because they were so optimistic, and like you said, they borderlined on being, I don't want to say emo for a sense, but they did act a bit like Tortured Souls. And if it wasn't for their performance and the earnestness, like it really felt like what they were saying came from a true place. And as Ethan Hawke said, that he learned to talk during these movies, and there was so much. There's a lot of research you can do about these movies, because they speak a lot about this movie, making this movie and putting themselves into the movie was so essential to Richard Linklater because of his own personal experience. And I've got a bit of a longer clip that I want to play this clip from Ethan Hawke talking about how he was kind of roped into this and why Richard Linklater making this movie at this particular time, he was motivated. And I really like this clip. This is about a 2-minute clip that Ethan Hawke was talking about that. And it really did make me think, this is cool, man. Because Ethan Hawke, at the time he made this movie, just, I don't know, his star was starting to rise, Dead Poet Society, a few other things. But I liked how Richard hooked Ethan with this movie. And let's hear Ethan talk about that a little bit now.
And then I got the offer for the movie, and I told Rick, I met him somewhere, and I said, look, you know, I really do want to do this movie, but if you had offered me anything After I saw Dazed and Confused and Slacker, I'd just say yes. You didn't have to show me the script and I'd say yes. But now that I've read the script, I don't think this is possible. A movie of the two. I mean, you know, My Dinner with Andre with two young people is going to be really impossible to pull off. And I said, well, you know, what makes you say that? And I teased him about, there were some incredibly long monologues in the original script. I remember there was one where literally my character talked about John Huston's The Dead and how it related to Meister Eckhart, okay, for pages. Right? And I'm like, this is impossible to pull off. You know, I mean, I don't know how to attack this speech. Like, how are we going to do that? And he just laughed and he had he's a person who's absolutely void of ego about it. He just laughed. Really? You think so? And he wrote me a letter, a lot of which I ended up putting in the opening of Before Sunset, which is he basically said to me, look, I've never been in a helicopter crash. I've never been involved in any espionage. I've never been in any gunplay whatsoever. But my life has been really dramatic. You know, it's been full of drama. And the most interesting thing that ever happened to me really is that feeling when you connect with another human being. A true connection with another human being. And I want to make a movie about that and that only. Doesn't need to have some elaborate plot. You can tell me that Meister Eckhart or John Huston's The Dead are not interesting if you want. But it's interesting to me because of what that says about the character if he is interested in those things. And people in real life just sometimes talk about a movie. You know, I'm like, he said, so listen, you can like the script or not like the script. What I'm doing is I'm inviting you to come to Vienna with Julie Dalpy and I want to make a movie about you two people connecting, and you're going to create your character and she's going to create her character. And we're going to try to do something that nobody's seen before. So how do you say no to that, right? And so we did it. I mean, I'm not saying we did that, what he said, but we went to Vienna and we tried to do that.
And if that's the intention that Rich Linklater had, I think he executed it. But even he would admit, and in another interview he does, the movie didn't make much money. It was seen of little interest. It's only after the second movie that it really came together and built this really cult following.